Okay, this story is about Annie. It appeared in New York Times. What was the date?
Sunday, October 17th.
And the story began, give or take, 2 or 3 years ago, when I carefully observed Annie in some of her many adventures. One of which was to go down to the Fulton Fish Market, but when the Fulton Fish Market was closed and moved up to the Bronx, she had to find another way of getting there rather than walking there. So we had this individual pick up every night with a pickup truck, throw her cart in the back, and she would hustle into the car. He was always anxious, and she was always trying to keep up with his anxiousness and go up to the Bronx to do her. And then after that closed and she was forced out, she began to just hang out on the street down here with her shopping cart and her milk, and rather her coffee and her cake, and sit on the steps down by the humor theater and observe and interact with people as they were walking by. And the story begins at that point and ends at another point here on the block on 4th Street here on the Lower East Side. She lived at 69? I forgot what number that is. 65 East 4th Street on the ground floor in the back. At one point in time, she had a very comfortable existence with everyone around here, but at some point, I guess somebody got her upset, and she pulled out a knife, and they called the police. The police showed up, and she still had the knife in her hands, and she got taken down, subsequently into the ambulance, and that's the last I seen of her. Next thing I know, she's dead. And that's where the story begins to unfold. Now we have to go back and read an article that appeared in the New York Times about her life and what she was really all about. So that's your part now.
The title is Annie and Gloria. At the Fulton Fish Market, she was shopping cart Annie, who hustled cigarettes and told dirty jokes. But a mysterious pin-up hinted at a life her South Street friends knew nothing about. The fishmen see her still, their Annie, in the hide-and-seek shadows of South Street. She's telling her dirty jokes and doing anything for a buck, hustling newspapers, untaxed cigarettes, favors, those pairs of irregular socks she'd buy cheap on Canal. She's submitting to the elements, calling out, "Yoo-hoo!" to the snow and the rain and her boys. For several decades, Annie was the profane mother of the Fulton Fish Market, that pungent Lower Manhattan place fast becoming a mirage of memory. Making her rounds, running errands, holding her own in the blue banter, she was as much a part of this gruff place as the waxed fish boxes, the forklift rocking cobblestones, and the cocktail aroma of gasoline, cigarettes, and the sea. Some ridiculed and abused her. Others honored and protected her. Young men new to the market were occasionally advised to make acquaintance with Annie's prodigious breasts, kiss them for good luck. And the veterans, young men once, often slipped her $1 or maybe $5 for a copy of a fresh tabloid, pay her for good luck. Young and old, they all had heard that the faded color photograph on display at Steve DeLuca's coffee truck of a striking young woman, a raven-haired knockout in a two-piece bathing suit, running barefoot against a glorious sky, was of Annie in her younger days, decades before her dark fish market terminus. But some could not see the coffee truck goddess in this bent woman at Shadow's edge, clutching the handle of the shopping cart she used to hold wares and provide balance, wearing a baseball cap, layers of sweaters, and men's pants, navy blue, into which she had sewn deep, leg-long pockets to keep her hard-earned rolls of bills safe. The supposed link between pin-up and bag lady sounded too much like an O. Henry tale of old New York and begged too many questions. Who are you, really, Annie? How did you wind up here at the fish market, receiving your boys, their taunts, the slaps of the East River winds? Where does all your money go? What is the larger meaning of your life's arc? Never asked, never answered. Annie was just there, always, as rooted to the market as the cobblestones. 5 years ago, when the city pried the 170-year-old fish market from lower Manhattan and moved it to Hunts Point in the Bronx, Annie came with it, at first often paying for a ride from her home somewhere in Manhattan. She was in her 80s by then, and she struggled to find warmth in the new market's chilled air. The men would sometimes see her in a corner, huddled against herself, sleeping. So maybe it was best when the city regulators at Hunts Point told Annie that she could no longer hawk her bestseller, her untaxed cigarettes, an order that would have been laughable in the old market's wide-open days. Soon the raucous market chorus of curses and price calls and forklift beeps was missing the occasional punctuating yoo-hoo. Then again, maybe the market was her life's oxygen. A few weeks ago, word spread among the fishmongers. South Street Annie, also known as Shopping Cart Annie, also known as Their Annie, had died. She was 85. Her given name was Gloria Wasserman, and the larger meaning of her journey's arc was this: life is a wondrous gray. When someone dies, the rest of us cobble together old photographs, faint remembrances, and snippets of things once said to make sense of the life lived. It is folly, but it is what we do. So here's Annie, incomplete, partially hidden still in the market's eternal dusk by the East River. According to one of her daughters, Barbara Fleck, Gloria Wasserman's parents were Polish immigrants who tried to make a living as egg farmers in rural New Jersey before settling in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. The father, Pincus, found work as a tailor. The mother, Sadie, was a homemaker. Together they fretted over their only daughter. She was almost too beautiful, which caused her to, well, Miss Fleck said. She had a lively spirit, which was almost frightening for these poor Jewish immigrants. Very beautiful and very spunky. A portrait from the mid-1940s shows Miss Wasserman in pearls, her dark hair swept up and sculpted, her expression that of a confident starlet waiting to be discovered. I think in her heart she would have wanted to have been an actress, Miss Fleck said. She didn't make it to the screen, but she acted in real life. While working in Manhattan's jewelry district, Ms. Wasserman met an ex-soldier named Fred Fleck, who planned to bicycle to Alaska, where he would attend college on the GI Bill. He suggested that she accompany him, and she did, Miss Fleck said, a free-spirited woman. The front page of the September 5th, 1947 edition of the Fairbanks Daily News, Miner, featured an article with the headline, "Bike hikers reach city 8 days out of New York." No, 83 days out of New York. Clad in clean white duck socks, faded colored wool shirts and moccasins, the young couple, deeply tanned, looked as though they had been on an afternoon's jaunt. Gloria's nut-brown, shoulder-length hair glistened in the sun. Glowing with enthusiasm, Gloria left her job as a manufacturer's model, an amateur entertainer, bought a bicycle and came along. She plans to get a job in Fairbanks, possibly as an entertainer. She was 22. After that, details get blurry. Ms. Wasserman married Mr. Fleck, gave birth to Barbara in 1950, and broke up with Mr. Fleck. She lived a bi-coastal life, it seems, working in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, running a bar then a record store, and returning to New York often to visit and provide financial support for her widowed mother, who was now raising Barbara. She had a knack, Miss Fleck said. She could make money. Miss Wasserman married a second time to a man named Grinnells and gave birth to 2 sons. Then, after this marriage broke down, she had a relationship that produced another daughter, Robin, in 1964. During these years, and the many that followed, Miss Fleck often had no idea what her mother did for a living. "I don't know how you could put it nicely," said Miss Fleck, who lives in Los Angeles, "but she had a flamboyant life." At some point, Ms. Wasserman returned to New York for good. And at some point, she assumed the role of Annie and began appearing at the Fulton Fish Market, selling her wares and, her close friends at the market gently say, herself. Exactly when is lost to time, but far enough in the past that it seemed as though she was as permanent as the skyscrapers, as permanent as the river, calling out to the late-night fishmongers and early morning Wall Street suits. When Frank Mineo, an erudite, reflective man, joined the market in 1978, she was already a fixture. No matter the weather, he said, she was always there. What a brutal way to live. She cleaned the market's offices and locker rooms and bathrooms. She collected the men's fish clothes on Friday and had them washed and ready for Monday. She ran errands for Mr. DeLuca, known as Stevie Coffee Truck, hustling to Chinatown to pick up, say some, ginseng tea. She accepted the early morning delivery of bagels. She tried to anticipate the men's needs, towels, bandanas, candy, and had these items available for sale. If the Brooklyn Bridge could fit in her shopping cart, she would have sold it, Miss Fleck said. Since all this hustling meant carrying around a lot of cash, she tucked away wads of bills in those deep-pocketed pants and other hiding places, including her brassiere. She tried to look shabby so people wouldn't give her a hard time when she left the market, recalled one of her protectors, Joe Centrone, better known as Joe Tuna. But she was regularly robbed. Away from the market, Annie lived as Gloria Wasserman in the East Village, in a city-owned apartment building that later became part of the Cooper Square Mutual Housing Association. She found joy in her family, a grandson, Travis, in California, and a granddaughter, Chelsea, in New Hampshire, but also sorrow. One of her sons, Kenneth Grinnells, died in a fire while squatting in a building in the city. The other, Carl Grinnells, struggling with drugs, moved into her apartment at one point while she slept in a room at the market, between the mackerel and the salmon, Miss Fleck said. But he died young too, hit by a car in the East Village. All the while, Annie kept working, rarely missing a day, and gave nearly everything she had to others. Barbara Grinnell, Carl's ex-wife, who lives in New Hampshire, said that Miss Wasserman often sent as much as $4,000 a month, usually through money orders, to her relations on both coasts. She also routinely sent along boxes of used clothing that she had culled from places like the Catholic Workers' Mary Street house on East 3rd Street, where she was known as that rare visitor who searched for items that fit others, and who had a gift for using humor and kindness to deflate the tensions arising from hardship. She became like a grandmother to dozens of women on the street who had nobody, said Felton Davis, a full-time Catholic Workers volunteer. Sensing the lack of esteem in a woman beside her, he said, she would say, "I have just the shirt you need. I'll get it for you." Meanwhile, up in New Hampshire, the clothes kept coming. The boxes would be opened, and it would be like, "Who wants this t-shirt? Who wants this sweatshirt?" Miss Grinnells recalled. So many people in this area got gifts from her. In 1999, Miss Wasserman decided to retire as Annie, telling the men at the fish market that she had health problems. Circulation problems in her legs, Miss Fleck said, related to years of working in the wet and cold. Joe Tuna and Stevie Coffee Truck raised $3,000 for her by hitting up all the hardened fishmongers. Off she went to live with her daughter, Robin, in California, and then with Miss Grinnells and Chelsea in New Hampshire. After 9 months in the country, though, Annie was back at the market, calling Yoo-Hoo and forcing Joe Tuna and Stevie Coffee Truck to do some explaining. With the money she earned by working in all weather, and the hours when the rest of us slept, Annie bought Chelsea a used Toyota Tercel. She paid for Chelsea's tuition at the University of New Hampshire and provided financial support to a ballet school in Los Angeles. Whatever money she took in, she sent out, while owning little more than a bed and a radio. Her relatives, in turn, regularly visited her in New York, where she would always tell them, "If we see anyone, I'm Annie." They called her often and sent her gifts that she probably gave away, and constantly begged her to retire from a job whose parameters were left vague, but whose pull for her was undeniable. She would always say, "We'll see," Chelsea recalled. She never wanted to leave New York and stop what she was doing. About 10 years ago, Joe Tuna and Stevie Coffee Truck heard that Annie had been hospitalized. They went down to New York Downtown Hospital and asked to see. Actually, they didn't know whom to ask for. "Annie?" they volunteered. "Shopping cart Annie?" "Gloria Wasserman," the clerk said, and directed them to her room, where their tough Annie now seemed so vulnerable. "That was the first time I ever saw her with her hair down," Joe Tuna said. "You could see the remnants of a beautiful woman." Then Annie got out of the hospital and went back to work. She continued to flash her breasts, more for the shock and a laugh than for anything else. She sold her goods, ripped into those who owed her money, accepted a hot cup of coffee when offered, and slipped away now and then to read from one of the books she always carried, like a stage actress resting between scenes. She also continued her other life as Gloria Wasserman, traveling to New Hampshire to attend Chelsea's wedding in 2006. There she is in the photographs, smiling with the bride and groom, a proud, beloved grandmother. For the last year of her life, the reluctantly retired Gloria Wasserman spent her days charming the East Village and her nights sharing dinner at Mary House. In spirit, she remained defiantly independent. In truth, she needed help with her hygiene, with her apartment, with climbing the stairs. She suffered a stroke in the brutal August heat and was admitted to Bellevue Hospital Center, where Mr. Davis, from the Catholic Worker, visited nearly every day. She was released after a month, spent a couple of weeks in New Hampshire, and then a couple more in California with her daughter Barbara. But she refused to eat or take her medication, and died in her sleep, 28,000 miles from the fish market. New York was her life, her daughter said. Work was her life. The word of Annie's death gave pause to the fishmen. Mr. Minio reflected on that space between black and white where all of us reside. And Joe Tuna has discovered that whenever someone in a crowd calls out, "Yoo-hoo!" his head jerks up and he is instantly back on South Street, amid the beds of glassine ice and the dead-eyed fish, and here she comes. The impressions and old photographs that Miss Wasserman left behind are, in the end, only impressions and old photographs. In fact, whenever reporters, including this one, referred to her in a news story, she would always complain that they had failed to capture her essence, which may, again, be true.